Hello, I'm Susan Corbett. I do mainly custom quilting, but today in this video, this will be mostly an overall, but as you can already tell, I've custom quilted the heart. So it's part custom, part overall. And this is an unusual project in that this is not meant to be a bed quilt per se. This is going to be a casket cover, which I think is a great idea. I just love it. The client here is a woman several states away who got a colleague of mine to piece this for her. I don't think she's a quilter. Her client, and then that woman brought this to me to machine quilt it. So the intent here is for this to be draped over the casket at this woman's funeral when she eventually dies, in lieu of a big pile of flowers. And I just think it's a lovely alternative. And then it becomes a keepsake for the family. So I love that, the whole subject matter here is growth. It's flowers in lieu of flowers. It's so pretty. I mean, these fabrics are just gorgeous. It's soft and lush and really beautiful. I think any family would like to have it. And I think it's just a great novel idea. I like it a lot. So clearly the focus here is not outstanding machine quilting. So why would I opt to do part custom, part overall? Because the hearts are appliquéd, and I want them to stand up and be the special part of the quilt. You certainly could overall the whole thing. But if you know anything about me, I'm never going to want to do that. I just thought this was great. So we're using 2 threads. My colleague brought her own thread. So what I'm doing now, this is the overall part. It's overall leaves in a soft green. And then when we do the roses in the hearts, that will be done in peach. So it's all very soft and pale. We don't need a thread change. You could do it all in one color. And we looked at several colors for the whole quilt. This is just kind of what I ended up with. So I put this on my long arm, and there isn't a whole lot of stabilizing here to be done. So opened with just going straight for the overall leaves. And as usual, if you've looked at my work before, these meanders, I like to make all the leaves different sizes, and they go in all different directions. And I throw in some curls and tendrils and berries and what have you to keep it interesting. The quilting will not show very much unless you look at it up close. And let me think. The batting in here, I think, is just Hobbs 80-20. 80 cotton, 20 poly. It gives us some lovely loft, and it wears really well. That's my standard go-to bed quilt bat. So, as you can see, we're already getting some really nice texture here. And this is so much fun to do. I could do this every day for hours and hours. If you want to grow your skills in machine quilting, and you know, gosh, what I hear all the time is, well, I haven't really gotten too far with freehanding because, you know, I'm afraid of it, or I'm just not real good at it. Well, then this is exactly your perfect kind of quilt, because all that green fabric, it's not going to show your quilting very much. And by the time you get to the end of this quilt, you will know how to quilt some leaves. You will have had ample practice. It will have taught you how to get in and around all these different shapes and spaces. And your leaves will not be so prominent that every little, what you judge to be a mistake, will show. If you look at leaves in real life, oh my gosh, they're full of all sorts of irregularities and differences, and you know, they curl and turn and they get all twisted up, or you know, some are big and some are little, and so how can you make a mistake? I don't think you can. So this is a perfect device for learning. All right, so I was quilting leaves all over the place, and then when I run into a heart, this is where I want to quilt right up to it and outline stitch right around the very edge of that heart. I normally do all the stabilizing first, but there was so little of it on this quilt that this is an exception. So I'm just stabilizing the hearts as I come to them. And you may or may not notice on here, I like to put veins in leaves. So I'm putting more veins in the larger leaves. And there's any number of ways to attack that. You can try to be really accurate, but the veins in leaves can be extremely detailed. That's not what you want to do when you're quilting. You just want to suggest the veins. So I can quilt some lines that are kind of close together, or I can put all kinds of little lines that branch off in different directions, or on the really small leaves, you know, don't do much of anything, or leave them empty. The leaves are going to show up in that peach fabric more than they will in the green. But that's coming along nicely. The thing that gets in your way is when you run out of bobbin and you have to stop and reload, or you run out of space and you have to advance the quilt some. But those little breaks are really nice and handy. You will go through quite a bit of thread doing this kind of a meander. And there will be times when you want to log off and start over again someplace else for various reasons. Maybe you've quilted yourself into a corner or something. And the quilting will show a lot more in that light colored border, but even then not that much because it's a print. This is just a whole lot of fun. So once all the leaves are in, then we'll switch thread and go freehand some roses. My rose teacher was Harry Wallner, H-A-R-I, who is no longer with us. She was a great teacher, and she made all kinds of machine quilting motifs that she sold in pattern packs. And then years later, she published a book with not all of them, but a whole bunch of them. And I don't think the book is still in print, but you could do a search for her name, Harry Walner, and her roses are in that. I don't know they're in one of her books. She published 3, I think. 3 that I know of. 2 of her books are about trapunto, and I think the roses are in one of her trapunto books. But any of her patterns or books would be well worth a search. Look online and see who's giving theirs up or something. She has all kinds of great tips. One of my favorites is, she used to say, check your tension. Your machine's tension and your tension. Take a break, go get a cup of tea or something, and come back in a good frame of mind, and you'll get much better results. So here's an example of quilting right up to one of the hearts and outline quilting right up against the perimeter of said heart. So I find the most difficult quilting to do when you're freehanding are smooth, rounded, and broad shapes. So if you're outline quilting little flowers and that kind of thing, the degree of difficulty is much less. And here I'm trying out what rulers are going to help me along. And the angles are always close, but not quite right. And then there are other days when outline quilting is just no problem. I mean, it's like another hand is guiding mine and everything falls wonderfully into place. And then other days, there's no way I can quilt that. It'll just be rickety and wobbly and bad. And so you have to use a ruler. And there's no predicting which is going to be which, except I do tend to need a ruler on larger shapes where I want the quilting to be really smooth. Now see there already, see what a great big difference it makes to either ditch quilt or outline quilt right around a shape. It makes the patch stand up and call attention to itself, and that's exactly what you want. We want those hearts to stand out. That's what is going to make this quilt a lot prettier and more unique and that much more special. Okay, so now for those freehand roses. I've switched to this pale peach thread. It's going to look white here in this shot, but it's much better in real life. But it's still pretty darn pale. So it's a slight contrast, which we love. A really heavy, dark contrast would be a lot harder to live with. All right, so you start with itty-bitty little round shapes in the middle, and then you build as you go around. And the key is to do a little bit of backtracking. And then another key, how big does that rose need to be? I mean, I've made some that are just enormous, and then I later think, well, that's just too big. So make them to where they look even and full, but not super huge. And then what do you do with all the rest of the space? Well, that's where you fill in with leaves. Now you've had all that leaf practice on the overall part. So here, the key is going to be making them look like they're peeking out from behind the petals. So you're gonna do some leaves that are not, well, they'll look like partial leaves. And I don't want to add too many of them because they need to complement, not take over. So I know backtracking gets a really bad rap, but when you're doing this, it's an integral part of the deal, and there's no way around it unless you want to have 49 stops and starts within each heart. So with this is the peach glide thread, so it's pretty darn thin, and I find backtracking with a thinner thread a lot more forgiving. You don't get a whole lot of unsightly heavy thread buildup. And one of the things about backtracking, if you've ever quilted a bunch of little pebbles, then you know that the more you encircle, the more they rise up and stand out. It defines the shape a lot more. So that's the benefit of backtracking here, is that you will delineate these shapes. And I don't mean go crazy with your backtracking, but where you have to do it, there's a way to make it work for you. So let's see that again, because there were a lot of things happening there. So you start kind of in the middle and quilt a rounded shape with another rounded shape. Lose those thread tails before they come back to haunt you. Backtrack a little and then quilt a petal with a little indentation. And backtrack and quilt a larger petal, and backtrack and quilt a larger petal. Figure out how big you want it. It helps to look at some actual roses, and boy, that'll show you just how many petals there are. And you don't want to quilt that many in here, because I don't want to squash the patch. You know, what did I do all that outlining for? Just to compress it flat. In Harry's great rose freehanding lesson, she includes putting in some little veins, sort of, some little partial ones to make the rose petals look like they're all creased, which is a wonderful thing to do. It's a lot of work, but that will pay off where you're really going to see all the details. This is not that quilt. We don't need all those details here. And see, there I'm backtracking around some previously quilted petals on the inside, not just around the perimeter, to make a little highway to get from one place to another. And I love how that rose is at an angle, so it's a partial and it's on the diagonal, sort of. It's nice to put in some little itty-bitty partial leaves, and you could do some thorns. Here it's nice to look at some actual rose leaves to see what they like to do. There's little groupings. You could do 3 or 5. Here there isn't really room to do 5 on one sprig, as it were. But whatever your shape will allow. Oh, that's pretty. I think it was well worth it. Yes, it's very subtle. But this is a special kind of quilt. And I think this was worth doing. Here's a close-up. The better you get at backtracking, you'll never see it. I hope that day comes for me someday. So pretty. Here's a better look at it from the back. It's a gorgeous back. So the woman who commissioned the quilt makes her own cards, and she sent me this thank you card, which is wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.